Good morning, Flosstube. My name is Sarah. Today is Friday the 14th of May 2021 and this is my very first Flosstube and it's a bit scary. I've been wanting to join Flosstube because I like what I see out there on Flosstube. I see a community of stitchers enjoying their stitching and sharing their passion and their tips and their techniques, enabling, lots and lots of enabling, and just generally creating community among each other when people in our everyday lives very often don't understand what the fascination with making X's on a piece of fabric is. So I'd like to be part of that. And since Flosstube is where you all are, I'm coming along for the ride. As I said, my name is Sarah and I live in Annahilt in Northern Ireland. It's really just a tiny rural crossroads. And while we're rural, we're not really too far from civilization. So it's quite a nice place to live. You have your feet in both camps and have the best of both worlds. Of course, during pandemic, there's been nowhere to be or go anyway. So we are keenly awaiting here in Northern Ireland the lifting of some further restrictions so that we might actually be able to meet friends for coffee and go out. It's been a very, very long second lockdown, and I'll be very glad when it's over and when we can have a little bit more normality again. In the meantime, I've got Flosstube and it has been keeping me very busy for the last number of months during lockdown, so I'm not quite sure where I would be without you guys and your tips and inspiration. Thank you all for that. I am married. I am married 23 and a half years now. And I have two children. My son is 19 and he is studying at university in Durham. And my daughter has just started primary school. She is just 5. So, yep, I'm busy at both ends of the scale. and I also work during the daytime. There are big changes from my work though. I work in financial support and administration for a consultancy company. Unfortunately, that company has been very badly hit by the restrictions from coronavirus, the lack of travel, inability to see our clients and pursue work streams with them. And so it looks at this time like my job is under threat and will certainly be a very, very much reduced role in the coming months. So I'm just waiting to see how that works out. In the meantime, we'll just keep stitching for sanity. In my spare time, I've always enjoyed reading and very often some form of needlecraft. I find that as I'm older now, I don't read as much as I used to, mainly because when I sit down with a good book, I'm asleep in about 5 minutes. So at least having a needle in my hand or a rotary cutter or sitting at my sewing machine does tend to take a little bit more focused activity, and I seem to be able to stay awake much better then. I think in my history, I've probably always, or nearly always, had some form of needlecraft love. I remember as a very small child, maybe about 5 or 6, torturing my Auntie Anne. Auntie Anne, please will you teach me to knit? My parents owned a butcher shop in Belfast, and every year in the week preceding Christmas, they would spend the entire week in the shop working day and night preparing turkeys for their customers, and we would stay with my aunt. My aunt was frantically knitting at that point the remainders of her Christmas presents for people, but that didn't matter. I just wanted her to teach me to knit anyway, and she was very gracious in spite of her long gift list. She did teach me to knit, and my mum picked up on that at other times too. And so from my mum and my aunt, I learned to knit. At school, I learned to stitch and to sew by hand. I loved Friday afternoons in primary school when the boys went to do their crafts and the girls went to do their needlework. We did knitting and stitching on Binka, that giant Ada type fabric. And I do wish that I still had some of those pieces. It would be lovely to have them just for nostalgic purposes, but they're long gone, sadly. When I was 18, I asked for a cross-stitch kit for my 18th birthday. Yep, I was that rock and roll girl. So I remember my mum bought me this Country Companions kit. It was 1992, I'm aging myself. And you know, there wasn't a huge amount of choice. Let's face it, here in Northern Ireland, there's still not a huge amount of choice, thank goodness for online ordering. Anyway, this was a Country Companions kit. It was a rabbit having breakfast. I think it might even have been called Breakfast Surprise, because the rabbit was sitting at the table. He was cracking open his egg and toast, and lo and behold, inside the egg was an Easter chick. So that was my very first cross-stitch design, and it would be lovely if I had it to show you, but I have no idea where that's gone, nor many of the other pieces that I stitched thereafter in my late teens and early 20s. Sadly, I think I stitched for the love of the stitch rather than for the love of the piece, and very often was just stitching what was nice, and a lot of that was cutesy, but I was 18, 19, 20. I didn't really want Country Companions on my bedroom wall. So I didn't actually know what to do with those pieces. When I got married in my mid-20s, I made a few pieces. This is one of them, which I've reframed recently. This was the stamped cross stitches, my one and only ever stamped piece. But I didn't really know how to use cross stitch in my home and still make my home look the way I wanted it to look at that time. So it sort of dwindled away, and you know, there were only so many Country Companions I wanted to stitch, and it just felt like there was nothing very new coming out. So I lost interest in it for a while. I had a child, my first child, and of course life changes then anyway, so you want to hide needles and sharp scissors and all those things. So for a time I laid the cross stitching down. I did pick it up again around 2006, and I think I have a few pieces around here that I would be able to show you maybe in future videos. So even then I was struggling to know how I wanted to use cross stitch in my home. So I just made a few pieces and then kind of left it aside again. 2009, 2010, I discovered patchwork and I was hooked. I was so smitten. I was learning to make straight lines on my sewing machine, how to make 4 patches, how to make half square triangles. My very good friend started to run some classes and I was able to go along. There was an explosion of patchwork and quilting bloggers at that time, and it was like being able to just catch a wave and ride along. And I started my own blog then too, and it was through that blog that I was able to find and create a community of like-minded people who were enjoying taking a perfectly good piece of fabric, chopping it all up and sewing it together in different shapes. So not something my family understood, but it was really lovely to find other creative types who understood and got the passion that we had for that, or were able to ooh and ah over a specific button because it was perfect for a project, or a lovely little piece of lace trim or whatever it was. And I see that happening now today on Flosstube instead of on blogs for cross stitch. So as I've come back into cross stitch in the last year or so, I've been looking to see where the community is, where can we share, where can we find out, and it's here on Flosstube that I found that community. It's not on blogs at the minute, so here I am trying to join the conversation, and keep up with all of you guys and all of what's new and current in the world of cross stitch. And I am surprised because I have learned so much in this last year, and cross stitch has changed immensely since the mid-2000s when I last left it, or the mid-90s when I was more prolific. And that's a good thing. It's a very good thing. There are now things called over-dyed flosses, and there are hand-dyed fabrics, and there's much more choice of, Aida and linens and even weave fabrics, and they're suited to different types of budgets. There's a huge number of new designers. There are modern designs. There's such a huge world of reproduction sampler stitching, which I didn't know existed. There's all the primitive stitchers, and then you have modern stitchers, retro stitchers, and subversive stitchers. So I think now, more than ever before, there is something for everyone in the cross stitch world. And it's nice to be part of that. It's nice to be catching this wave and coming along and seeing what there is to be had and what might work for me this time in cross stitch. During the pandemic last year and our very first lockdown, I really struggled with so much of the uncertainties of what was coming in our world and in our lives. And suddenly I had two children at home. I had an 18-year-old who was not sure if he was going to sit A-levels that he'd been working for, not sure how that was going to affect his entry to university this year. And then I had a preschooler at home with her year cut short, and she has special needs, so explaining all of that to her was impossible. And just having no idea myself, this was unprecedented. I had no idea how this was all going to turn out or how to cope, and yet here we were trying to keep our children on the level and not knowing what was happening ourselves. In all of that, the normally therapeutic time that I would spend sewing on my machine and making patchwork, making quilts, making cushions, it just seemed to disappear. It was as if that was all too much to think about. It was all too big for me at that time. And it took a number of weeks before I could settle my head to stitch anything at all. And what I actually did was I picked up on a little project idea that was thrown out on Instagram by Sarah Edgar of Pretty Fabrics and Trims. And Sarah started a hashtag called Sew a Little Happiness Every Day. And the idea was that you would have a grid, stitch a grid, and in each of the little portions of that grid, every day you would just spend 5 minutes or so, or however long you wanted, just doing some stitching, hand sewing, a little bit of embroidery, a little bit of applique, add a little button here or there. And that really appealed to me because that was small, it was manageable, and it was a distraction. And so this is my Sew a Little Happiness Everyday sampler. You can see I just drew my own grid, and some days I would embroider something. I even drew this one. I'm not really very much of an artist, but I was able to draw a few simple embroideries. And I tried some French knot embroidery. I just took an opportunity to try new things and do some new things because I didn't have very many embroidery stitches in my arsenal at that time. But I just tried it day after day. I did something different. I raided my books. I looked for patterns and motifs that were in books. Sarah provided this to get everyone started, this Sew a Little Happiness Every Day. And after that, people just took it where they wanted to go. And there was a real sense of mindfulness about this project, escapism perhaps. You'll see that mine has got this little symbol, which was the stay-at-home symbol that you would have seen on some social media during the first part of the pandemic here in the UK, and I put it the year 2020. Not that I'm likely to forget the year 2020. Some days all I did was sew on a button, and other days I did something more elaborate like English paper piecing or applique house, and I put in some of my favourite words: hope and faith and family and faith's up here. So you can see it was just a few minutes a day, a little bit of distraction at a time when really my mental health was affected by what was going on in the world. So that was really nice. And at the same time, I discovered on Facebook that there were embroidery sew-alongs happening by a French company called Un Chat dans l'Aiguille, by a wonderful embroideress called Christelle. So Christelle had offered up she actually did 2 sew-alongs during the pandemic last year. And the first one was a lotus flower. And this was amazing. Every Wednesday, Christelle, for 5 or 6 weeks, Christelle would upload one part of this, and she would have video demonstrations of the different stitches that were involved. Sorry, my tag is in the way. And I just used this as an opportunity to practice, to try new things. I then translated some of these stitches across into my Sew a Little Happiness Everyday sampler. And again, it was just escapism, really, escape from worry and anxiety about what was going on. It was also just a really lovely opportunity to upskill and to try something new. So you will see from time to time that I will probably show you other embroidery projects. I don't do lots and lots, but I do enjoy a little bit. But these are 2 embroidery projects. The reason I'm showing you these on a cross-stitch floss tube is because they were really the start of getting me back to cross-stitching after all of that time. Because on Facebook and YouTube and searching around the embroidery scene, I suddenly realised that Fat Quarter Shop, Kimberly Jolly, had a Flosstube channel. And once I found that, there was really no turning back. I loved it. I really loved watching Kimberly on a Wednesday talking about the cross stitches. Suddenly I could see this whole world of cross stitch designs and patterns that I would want to stitch, that I would like to make, that I would like to gift. And that was the first thing I did, was I made some to gift. Hopefully by the magic finger of Flosstube, I will be able to show you here the 3 little hoops I made as gifts for my stitching best friends. We get together a couple of times every year. 2 of us live here in Northern Ireland, 2 of us live in England, and we try to hop across the Irish Sea and visit each other and have some stitchy time together. But obviously this last year we haven't been able to do that. But last summer, when we were supposed to have been able to meet up, we decided we would swap our little gifts anyway. And I didn't want to sew on the sewing machine. I didn't want to make a pouch this time. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then Kimberly showed her Happiness is Homemade cross-stitch pattern. And I thought, that's it. That's what I want to stitch. So I did. I stitched 3 different versions of the same pattern. I trimmed the hoop with some pretty lace and I sent them off to my friends, and they were very happily received, and I loved every second of that stitching. And since then I think there has just been a cross stitch in my hand every week, at least several times a week. So it's been really, really great getting back into cross stitch, learning what's new, seeing what's out there, and joining this community where I would like to share my stitching with you. So I hope that you'll forgive me, because what you've seen so far hasn't all been cross stitch, and the next thing isn't either. But I have gone plummeting down the rabbit hole that is Flosstube, and I'm thoroughly enjoying the experience, even if some days I get a little bit overwhelmed. It would be really easy for me to get swept away by every stitch along going and join everything and become totally overwhelmed. So I'm still trying to figure out a routine that might work for me, that, you know, so there are some things I've tried, some things are working, some things are not. So hopefully part of my Flosstube journey will be getting the balance right between joining in and being overwhelmed by every new thing that comes along. Right now I am in 2 stitch-alongs. The first one is Shine On and the second one is Celebrate Chantilly Sew. I am giving Whip Go a go. I'd never heard of Whip Go until February, so I'm giving that a try this year. And I also have rather a large basket. Let me show you. A large basket of whips. Don't tell my husband. Anyway, I'm sure you'll all have similar baskets. So that's what I have on the go at the minute. I start this little show and tell section with what I call my daily thread project. This is an idea that I got from watching Laurie Holt's Flosstube, actually about maybe 8 weeks ago. She mentioned that when she stitches, every day that she stitches, she starts her stitching by adding one thread to a red sampler, and she stitches that thread in, and then she moves on to whatever was on her stitching plans. And it's a great way to see some progress on, continuous progress on a project. So I have this project, Be Happy. I don't know if you can see that very well, just with the light coming through it. This is Be Happy. It's not cross-stitched, but it's half cross-stitched. Am I allowed to make that pass? So it's a 10th stitch, like needle point with wool. And it's designed by the Historical Sampler Company. It comes in a lovely kit, a bag like this, like so, and will look like that when it's finished, I hope. Let me see if I can show you their information. There you go. They have a lovely website. They have mostly cross-stitch kits, but they do have a few of these tapestry needlepoint kits as well. So this is Be Happy. And I decided that Be Happy would be my daily thread project. And I have made really great progress without actually making Be Happy a focus project. So you can see I've been filling in, the border is complete, and filling in the background here. And every day I just take a thread and I work that thread till it's finished, and then I put it away and I get out whatever other project I have been able to do. So you can see that I've made quite a good amount of progress on this in the last month. Of course, if I'd showed you where it was to begin with, that would have been more helpful, but I will learn to do that. So this is my daily thread, and I've decided that I'm going to decide month by month what I want my daily thread project to be. So it might not be this one next month, or it might be because I want to just keep going and finish it, but I might decide it's something different. But a daily thread, and you do make progress, even if you don't manage it every single day. And then I said I was into sew-alongs. So the first sew-along that I'm in is for this cross-stitch sampler from the Bonnie and Camille Quilt Bee book. I was never not going to buy this book. You will see, if I ever show you my quilting, that 80% of what I quilt will be in Bonnie and Camille fabrics. I love them. Love, love, love them. So when this book was coming out, I really want to make this quilt. But the bonus for me was that in the back of the book, they have also provided a fabulous, can't show you the chart, cross-stitch version of the quilt. And so this is how it should be. I joined the Fat Quarter Shop Sew-Along for the sampler. I didn't realise how much work there would be in each week's section, but I've been really enjoying it. I want to show you where I've got to. This week I worked a little bit ahead because I was struggling to keep up the last few weeks, and I decided that I would make it a bit more of a focal point this week. You can see I still need to finish here, the red bars in these blocks, and there's another section down here that I'd like to finish before next week. That should put me a little bit ahead, which allows, because some of these blocks have had so much stitching in them. you know, we started with the crosses at the top and that was fine, but then you come to these which are more full coverage areas, and they really did take a long time. However, I have loved every stitch, and it is Bonnie and Camille, so what's not to like? So that's Shine On, which hopefully will be finished about the middle of June. And I know there's another wonderful Laurie Holt flea market flowers sew-along starting then, and I have the pattern. I'm just not sure if I should do the sew-along or wait and sew it myself later on. You'll see that I've got quite a few other big things on the go, so I'm thinking I might not be able to do it along with the sew-along, but that pattern and most other Laurie Holt things will be on my to-do list at some point. So my next sew-along I mentioned was the Chantilly Sew-Along, Celebrate Chantilly. Let me just fix this. The Celebrate Chantilly Sew, and I will try to add links for all of the things that I mentioned in the show notes below, but I don't know how to do that yet, so I can't promise, but I do promise to try. So this is for Chantilly Sew, Celebrate Chantilly Sew, hashtag Celebrate Chantilly Sew. And it's a celebration sew of all of the patterns, any of the patterns by Madame Chantilly, who I believe is an Italian designer who makes beautiful things. So this sew was started by Evelyn across the pond, and I hope that you have all seen Evelyn by now. If you haven't, you really need to go and watch her. Again, I'll try to link her down below. She's lovely, she's young, and she's enthusiastic about every stitch that she makes, and it's just such a pleasure to watch her. But Evelyn and I forget who else, my apologies, decided that they would stitch. I think they're doing the winter. This is a tiered tray, and this one is spring. Can you see? Excuse my terrible nails. This one is spring. And there are a number of these seasonal and celebration tiered trays. So there's spring, summer, autumn, winter, Christmas, 4th of July. I think there's a Halloween maybe. There are a number, and they're beautiful. There are also lots and lots of other patterns by Madame Chantilly, and they're all gorgeous. So really, if you haven't had a look at Madame Chantilly patterns, you should go and check it out. Check out her Etsy shop, and she's also available on some of the other online retailers as well by Hard Copy Pattern. So you can see that I have been working, and again there's quite a lot of stitching in this tiered tray, and it's quite big. I didn't expect it to be this big because I hadn't really thought about it before I started to stitch. I'm stitching this one on a 16 count Aida in white chocolate. It's a Permin Aida, and it's in white chocolate. The Shine On sampler, which I forgot to tell you, was an 18 count antique white Aida. I do sometimes stitch now on even weaves and a little bit of linen, not so much linen because it's more pricey, but I would prefer even weaves to Aida now, but I do still have some Aida in my stash and I'm using that up. So you can see I've worked the full top tier of the tray and the lovely bunting. The little shepherdess needs her sheep next, I think. And this little jar of hyacinths in bloom is just very pretty too. So I've got these ones to do. You can see from the pattern what's to come. Little birds on a swing in a birdhouse and another rabbit and a hello spring sign. So I think that I also underestimated just quite how much stitching was involved in this one, but it is lovely, and maybe in about 8 years time I will have a full set of seasonal tiered trays, because it's really just not going to happen anytime soon, but that's okay because I'm enjoying every stitch. So those are my two sew-alongs that I'm in at the moment. I know there are so many others around and about and coming up, and I'm very tempted, especially by the flea market flowers. But I do need to just maybe be a bit more sensible, sort of, almost, nearly. We'll see how that goes. So I also mentioned that I had joined WhipGo this year, and this is my WhipGo chart. I created my chart in February, so I missed January. I had never heard of WhipGo in January, so I wasn't ready to start then. But I have managed to meet my goals in February, March and April. Haven't quite got to any stitching at all for WhipGo in May, so I do need to get on that in this last half of the month. But I thought WhipGo sounded like a really nice way of creating my own motivation alongside others on Facebook, and I could set my own goals and list my own projects. So that's what I did. I listed some projects across the 24 squares, or probably 22 it was, since I missed January. I listed my projects across the squares, and I decided that my goal for each of those projects, when they're called, is to try to stitch for 10 full hours on that project in that month. So that's, that's like a weekend's night stitching, 3 hours on a Friday night, 4 on a Saturday and 3 on a Sunday. And that's quite a big focus. So I thought maybe in that I would be able to see some progress and some focus and give some attention to my projects that way. As I said, I've been managing the goals this month, or up till this month. And this month my projects are a new start. So it's not quite managing a whip, but it's a new start, which I'm hoping I might be able to make quite a dent in 10 hours, because it's just small. So I've got some 32 count antique white Murano here, and I've chosen some Sulky Petites. This is Sulky 12 weight, which I've never tried but really want to try. So I thought this would be a good project to do it. And the project is Create Every Day. I'm going to show the chart because it's free. So here it is. It's Create Every Day. There's a needle and thread. And this is by Teresa Kogut, and it's available for free on the Fat Quarter Shop website. I will try and link it below for you. But this is a project that I'm hoping to stitch on this 32 count with these threads. Sorry. Let's see. 32 count with these threads. And then I hope to make it into a little panel for a project bag. The nice thing about being a quilter and a machine sewer, no clothes though, but quilting, machine sewing, home accessories, is that I can easily rustle up a project bag. So this one is just from my scraps, but I'm hoping that Create Every Day will become a panel in a future project bag. So I'm hoping that 10 hours will make good progress on that one, but I am not the world's speediest stitcher. And it's also not a race, so that's okay. So that's one of my WhipGo called for projects for May. And the other one is humongous. The other one is a modern folk embroidery sew-along. Now this is the 2020 sew-along. So can you see? It's called the Family Patchwork Sampler. It's by Jacob at Modern Folk Embroidery. It was originally released in 2020 in monthly parts. I am just starting. Well, I have started, but I'm still working in the January release for 2020. Obviously, I'm not part of the sew-along, the stitch-along. I really didn't know anything about this in 2020, so this wasn't one that had come to my attention. And I preferred this chart personally over the 2021 sampler stitch-along from Modern Folk Embroidery, although it is also gorgeous. But this one would work much better for me in my home. So this was the one I have decided to stitch. And I am stitching on a 32 count Murano in antique white with thread, DMC thread, and the number, sorry, I'm just having a wee look, the number is 3832, and it's this gorgeous pink shade, and that's all I have managed to stitch so far. But I'm hoping that 10 hours of stitching will allow me to finish January and maybe even move into February a little bit, although that might be slightly optimistic. But it will be such a pleasure to stitch another 10 hours on this. It has been a lovely stitch so far, and it is going to be humongous. I don't think I've ever stitched anything that will be this big. So that must be the full, I don't know, fat quarter, half meter, maybe more. No, full fat quarter, I think. So yeah, it's going to be big, but it's going to be beautiful, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I'm allowing myself a couple of years to stitch this one, because I just know there are too many things that I see, too many things that I like, and I won't devote 100% of my time to any one thing. Years ago I would have been a monogamous stitcher. I would never have dreamt of having 2 or 3 projects on the go at one time, and now I quite happily have about 9 or 10 on the go at once, with lots more waiting in the wings. Lots more. So, but that's all good. It all helps to keep up the momentum, and you don't get over-phased or bored by any one project. And the rules are being set by me, so I can change them when I like. And if I want to be monogamous for a month or 2, then I can be. There's no police, just me. So those are my 2 sew-alongs and my 2 whipco projects, which I need to get at this month. And my other 2 projects that are currently my active whips, because I do have other whips. I just haven't been active on them for the last couple of weeks. And my other 2 are, one is an embroidery and one is another cross stitch. So this embroidery is another pattern by Christelle at Untitled Chapter. This is a paid pattern, and this is Quand Salomé se promène à vélo. So it's when Salome goes on her bicycle. And you can see Salome is beautiful. It's snowy day. She's got a fabulous scarf, and her little kitty is in the basket of her bicycle. This one I'm stitching for my daughter, for her little area of our lounge room, and I have a couple of other Chantilly patterns that I have stitched, and when this one is finished, I'll show them all together. They're all going to hang together in a little area of our living room that is my daughter's little play area. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't have a huge amount left to do. The cat's hat needs his stars, and he needs a face and a tail, and the basket just needs some finishing, and then there are background snowflakes and snowdrops to accentuate, and I'm really hoping that I can get this one finished before the end of the month. It would just be nice to get it done, because it's been hanging around for a wee while, and I thought I would have had it finished a couple of months ago, but I got distracted by other things. Squirrels! So that's Salome. Again, if you are interested in embroidery stitching, and I know that Flosstube were mainly about our cross stitching, but if you are interested, I really would recommend that you have a look at Untitled. Their website has beautiful patterns and beautiful designs on, and they ship internationally from France. But there are also the options on Facebook for the sew-alongs, and I think there might be a sew-along coming up soon, like a funky holiday caravan sew-along. And so far this sew-along, the sew-along with the lotus flower, and the sew-along that I did after that, which was a beautiful butterfly called Follow Your Dreams. Those were free. Christelle provided free patterns for those and free video tutorials. She has also, in recent months, started to provide video tutorials for some of the other projects that she sells on her website. So, for example, she has an embroidery book and a few embroidery booklets that you stitch what would be like an embroidery sample book. And she has videos now to support those, which this time last year she didn't have, but she is creating those so that you can page by page follow along with the free video tutorials. So they're worth looking at. Christelle is French. She is mega talented at embroidery. She is also multilingual. So while the videos are in French, she also translates to Spanish and translates to English. And I found it very watchable, very doable. At the end of the day, you're watching her hand in the needles anyway, but she does explain lots as you go along, and I learned so much. So just, I know it's not cross stitch, but if you are interested, please do have a look, because her work is amazing and her kits are beautiful. And there's, you know, there's a lot of variety, so it's worth having a look. I will try to link in the show notes. Fingers crossed that I can learn how to do that for you. So that's Salome. I'm hoping that I'll finish her before the end of the month. And my last current WIP that I'm wanting to share with you is another modern folk embroidery. Let me just pop this one on the board. Here we go. And this, as you can see, I haven't finished the border yet. And I'm not quite sure why, but for some reason I started here and came down and across the bottom and up, so I haven't actually finished the top border. I don't really know why. But this is being stitched on a 32 count Murano in platinum, and I am using fancy floss for the first time ever. This is the first time I have ever used an overdyed floss. And it's a Gentle Arts 0892 Loganberry. And it is beautiful. It has purple hues. See if I can hold this up for you to see. Purple hues, sort of, sorry. Almost toning into caramel shades. And mauve. It really is a wonderful colour. It's maybe not showing up the best here, but it is beautiful. And this is going to be a gift. So I need to keep stitching at this one because there's still a lot to go. And the pattern, which you're probably all thinking, show us the pattern, is Modern Folk Embroidery, Home Sweet Home. Again, this is another one by Jacob. Excuse my writing at the top. It's just my notes so that I know what I'm working with. So you can see that I have been working on I've been working on this kind of foliage border. There's another alphabet band at the bottom. And then this wonderful house. I can't wait to stitch this house. I think it's going to look amazing in this thread. So yeah, I need to keep going. Stitch, stitch, stitch. Don't stop. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that one finishes up, and I'm hoping that my friend who will receive it will love it too. So that's really all the stitching I have to show you this time. There's lots more hiding in my baskets, but you know, we'll save that for another video. My plans are hopefully that if I can do this, if I can record the video, if I can edit the video and get the video to do the things I want it to do and look okay and acceptable, that I will upload the video to YouTube and start my channel, and hopefully return every 2 or 3 weeks to have a little progress update and a little chat about what's going on now in my stitching world. But I would really like it if you would join in and let this not be a one-sided conversation, but join in. Tell me what you think about what I'm stitching. Tell me you hate it. Tell me you think it's too twee. Tell me you love it. Tell me what you're doing. Tell me that you have a Flosstube and I'll come and check you out. Let's have conversation and let's have community. So it would be really nice to get to know a few of you more just through conversation. So I hope to come back in a couple of weeks and show you that I have made some more progress on Shine On, and maybe even on Celebrate Spring. But I think Home Sweet Home, the gift, Modern Folk Embroidery gift, needs to be a focus for the foreseeable future. I'd like to be able to say that I've also met the WIP goals and spent 10 hours on each of those projects. And if I'm not back before the 31st of May, which is a spring bank holiday here, then I would like to have a new start on the 31st of May. I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what that is. It is Heartstring Sampleries, My Necessity. I can't wait to stitch this one, but I'll tell you about it another time. But if I'm not back before the 31st, I'm very much hoping that I might make a small start on that on the 31st. So I think that's enough to be getting on with today. Next time I want to share some more of my stitching, some older stitches and some of the other WIPs that are in my basket. I would like to tell you a little bit more about who I watch on Flosstube, because I haven't had time to do that this morning, and maybe even a little bit about what's waiting in the wings in the future, what I'd really like to be getting up to in the months ahead. Let me know if you have any questions, put them in the comments, and if there's something that you'd like to see, if there's something you'd like to know that I maybe didn't explain fully or didn't go into that maybe I haven't thought about, please don't be shy and add it in the comments below. So if you've lasted this long, I hope it's a sign that you've enjoyed my chat and my stitching. Please like the video and subscribe so that you can join me next time. Thank you and stay well. Bye.